You're watching News Central now on News Central Television. I'm Dashen, Usman. The top stories. President Tinubu calls for swift evacuation, humanitarian aid. DSS returns NLC leaders' seized passport. Angolan government faces backlash over laws curbing free speech and assembly. Details of these stories coming up shortly. Residents of Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, are now desperately calling for help from the government as the flood waters have displaced thousands. The state is battling with what appears to be the worst flooding in 30 years. The flooding is caused by the collapse of the dike and overflow of Alau Dam, which is about 10 kilometers away from the metropolis. We have more on this next report.
Thousands of residents in Maiduguri, Borno state capital, and parts of Jere local government area are now stranded. Their homes, schools, and businesses overtaken by floods. The collapse of the dike and overflow of the Alau Dam, which is about 10 kilometers away from Maiduguri metropolis, is what has led to the displacement of the residents. After the secretary to the Borno state government, Bukari Tijani, led a delegation to assess the situation of the dam last week, he assured the general public that there was no cause for alarm as measures would be taken to mitigate any disaster. Sadly, the reverse was the case as flood waters started flowing into town from Monday. The flooding has since affected major areas like Shehu's Palace, Monday Market, Post Office area, Gwange Moromoro Customs Bridge, and the zoo, amongst others. Residents of various communities have since been advised by the police to avoid flooding routes and stay in safer areas as the police and other relevant government agencies are doing everything possible to ensure safety of lives and property.
President Bola Tinubu has ordered the immediate evacuation of residents in flood-hit communities. In a statement on Tuesday, Tinubu expressed deep concern over the severe flooding in Maiduguri, Borno state capital, and directed government agencies to expedite rescue operations. He assured Governor Babagana Zulum that the federal government is prepared to work closely with the state to meet the urgent humanitarian needs of those affected. Borno state is experiencing its worst flooding in decades, with thousands displaced and critical facilities, including a post office and Maiduguri teaching hospital, a cemetery, and a zoo, heavily impacted. The Coalition for Good Governance have raised concerns about threats to democracy and national security. The CGG expressed alarm over attempts to undermine democratic institutions and called on Nigerians to remain vigilant and resist divisive tactics. At a press conference in Lagos, the CGG discussed issues bordering on fuel scarcity and lack of transparency regarding the cost of production of PMS per litre, the arrest of Mr. Joe Ajaero, president of Nigerian Labour Congress, amongst others.
We call on NNPCL to remain focused on its mandate and resist any politically motivated distractions. 2, we demand that the Dangote refinery disclose the actual cost of PMS production per litre at its refinery for the purpose of transparency and accountability. 3, we insist that Mr. Ajaero and the NLC refrain from using the Nigerian workers' platform to jeopardize national security and instead cooperate fully with the law enforcement agencies and focus on its mandate to ensure a better welfare for Nigerian workers. Together, let us safeguard our democracy, promote accountability, and work towards a brighter future for all Nigerians.
Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi, says individuals found guilty of corruption should not be granted state pardon. He emphasized the need for thorough investigations by law enforcement agencies and urged them to have their facts straight before summoning anyone for questioning. Fagbemi made these comments at a roundtable organized by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission in Abuja. He suggested that the Constitution be reviewed to expunge the possibility of pardoning those found guilty of corruption, serving as deterrent to others. The AGF stressed that everyone's cooperation is necessary to fight corruption effectively. The Department of State Services has released the passport of the embattled national president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero. The release was facilitated on Tuesday by Abubakar Marshal of the Falana Chambers. The DSS had seized Ajaero's passport following his release on Monday night after being detained for over 15 hours while en route to the United Kingdom for union business. NLC President's Counsel, Femi Falana, confirmed the release, stating Ajaero's passport was handed over today through his colleague, Abubakar Marshal. In response to Ajaero's detention, the NLC had issued a midnight ultimatum to the government, prompting the DSS to release him before the deadline. Away from that, the Department of State Services has clarified the visit of its officers to the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project SERAP office in Abuja on Monday. In a statement on its website, the DSS denied allegations of an unlawful raid, stating that the visit was part of a routine investigation by two unarmed agents. The agency insisted the visit was misconstrued as harassment and intimidation. Meanwhile, SERAP has condemned the DSS call or actions, calling it an invasion and an assault on the human rights community. They urged President Bola Tinubu to order an end to the intimidation and harassment. SERAP also expressed concern over the growing crackdown on human rights and called for a thorough investigation into the incident. The crisis engulfing the Labour Party seems to be taking a new dimension after the National Executive Committee, led by the embattled National Chairman Julius Abure on Monday, announced that the party's presidential ticket for the 2027 election is no longer reserved for its former candidate, Peter Obi. Speaking at a press briefing following the party's National Executive Committee meeting in Abuja, Abure stated that the 2027 presidential ticket is now open to all members of the party. He also dismissed the possibility of an automatic second-term ticket for Abia's State Governor Alex Otti, emphasizing that the seat will be contested by other aspirants. He further clarified that Governor Otti does not have the authority to convene a stakeholders meeting that led to the formation of a caretaker committee chaired by former Senator Nenadi Usman. Abure asserted that no governor has the power to remove the National Working Committee or dissolve state and local government councils, stating that the Labour Party will not be intimidated out of office. To discuss this, we're joined by public affairs analyst Dotun Ojon. Hello, Dotun. Thank you for joining us at this time.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, so go ahead and tell us what implications does the Labour Party's decision to open up its presidential ticket have on Peter Obi's potential candidacy in 2027 elections?
Okay, thank you once again for having me. I remember immediately after the 2023 election, I gave a political prophecy that just after the election, the Labour Party will enter into what I call its season of crisis. And that's exactly what played out, because in my about a decade study of politics in Nigeria, you can have a political party come from a seeming obscurity to limelight like that. And once that kind of party does not win election, you see that the ruling party will do everything within its power to ensure that such a political party is frustrated. And I think what we have in the Labour Party today is not just about the crisis within the party, it's also, by extension, influences here and there. And the influence is not only limited to the ruling APC. You can also say, without missing words, that the influence can actually come from other sources, other political parties, aside from APC. Because once Labour Party is standing, you will remember that a chunk of the leadership of Labour Party at a point when Peter Obi moved to that party actually came from PDP, starting from himself to the Director General of his campaign organization to a whole lot of people. So PDP is somewhat affected by Peter Obi exit. And going into 2027 election, I doubt whether the other political parties will allow Labour Party to continue to thrive to the point where it will be able to gain national government. So I think the crisis we have in Labour Party, if you have studied politics very critically, you know that it extends to other political parties, and the influences are also maybe from other sources.
All right, so but how does, this move affect Peter Obi's influence within the Labour Party? I'm talking about his political future, his political, yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, sorry, I wanted to add that quickly, that it's going to be exceedingly difficult, if not practically impossible, for Peter Obi to go back to PDP. And leaving Labour Party at this moment may also not spell anything good for him, because it will mean that within a short period of time, he has moved from PDP to Labour Party, then from Labour Party to another political party. So I think it's going to affect him a great deal. And one of the things that you get to learn from ruling party, when PDP was in government, PDP has an internal mechanism where how they resolve their matters. In fact, the leader of the PDP, and by extension APC as we have it now, is usually the president. So the leader of the political party of the ruling party is the president. And the essence of that is for the president to have a way of pacifying people when crisis breaks out. People like us were thinking that Peter Obi will automatically assume this leadership position and be able to reconcile all the factions within the Labour Party, so that 2027 election, he will be able to flag the flag of the party again. But as we speak now, if he allows the crisis to fester, I doubt whether that is going to add anything to his political future. And I doubt, this is my fear, he may get to a point, if this crisis continues, that Peter Obi may get to a point of political orphanage, that is a public figure, an acceptable figure who does not have a home. And in our democratic practice,
will it affect his chances, in the 2027?
That's what I'm saying. Election? If you do not, in our political system today, if you do not have a political party to run with, then you cannot contest election. We don't have single candidacy here. So it's going to affect him a great deal. So as a form of advice, if he can do anything possible within the limit of the law to reconcile the aggrieved factions of the party and bring them together, the better for him.
But what about the
opportunities? We may not see his name in the ballot.
What about the opportunities, that this lack of cohesion within the Labour Party presents for other opposition parties?
When you talk about other opposition party, I'm wondering whether you have heard or think of one. What we have now in paper, usually before now we had 18 political parties, and there was a Supreme Court judgment that added one to it, making 19 political parties in paper. But in reality, Nigeria has systematically sunk into a one-party state. And this is what I mean. Apart from the ruling APC today, you can talk about a few other political parties here and there. Number one, we can talk about the People's Democratic Party. But it's on record that one of the major financiers of the People's Democratic Party today works with the APC. And when you talk about some of these other political parties, you discover that as we are today, in terms of running government, what we have is a one-party system. Because even the opposition voices in the National Assembly, you don't get to hear them any longer. And it's so painful. And I need to quickly clear this. Making a state a one-party system is not actually a function of that government alone. It is in connivance with the people. When the people agree somewhat to say, oh, we only have one political party. And how do people agree? It is when you see credible alternative, when you see credible people in other political parties. Once you have the mindset that, oh, these ones cannot win election because they are not in the major party, you are indirectly saying that we have one party system. As it is today now, that's why you hardly hear that any one of them is talking at the National Assembly. It is usually they say that, oh, the majority can have their way, but the opposition, the minority will have their voice. But as we speak now, the minority is not having its voice. The majority is just having its way without any constraint, if not, we should not be having a situation as we speak now where the Federal Republic of Nigeria will be thrown into hunger crisis. I mean the citizenry. And you are not hearing anything from the opposition. So as we speak now, we should forget about whether on paper we have 19 political parties, but in reality, in practice, in the act of governance as we have it today, Nigeria is gradually sinking into one-party system, and it's so saddening.
Okay, so if you could, what advice would you have for Julius Abure, on everything that's, going on, and especially his allegations that keeps coming up, and then that of financial mismanagement of the party as well?
There's not how you will run a party like a Labour Party that you will not have, considering the way they came from obscurity to limelight. The highest they've ever got is to have won a governorship seat in Ondo State. Then, and before you know it now, they are coming out to contest a presidential election, significantly having that kind of number that they do have. So the advice I will give to them is not just to one person. If they are actually serious about forming a national government, they must get to a point of understanding. No matter what the crisis may be, they will still get to a point where all of them will have to sit on the table. And Peter Obi must remember that being the presidential candidate of the party means that to a certain degree, some kind of leadership responsibilities have been placed upon your shoulder, and it is to unite everyone. You will remember that even one of his spokespersons came out to say that the way Peter Obi was handling the party was somehow that he was handling it as if he could not put his feet on the ground. There are places where decisions need to be made, and once the act of leadership is not the act of selling ice cream. You must be able to come across as somebody who has the tenacity, the capacity, the technical know-how, the ability to manage a political party. Because running for office is totally different from managing a political party. Now you have run for office, you've got a significant vote, you must be able to return to the drawing board, providing leadership and understanding within the fold of your party, so that by 2027, at least you can come out and everybody will still see you as a serious-minded person and a serious-minded political party.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dotun, for speaking with us.
It's a pleasure.
The youth make up 70% of Nigeria's population, putting their numbers at 151 million people. That is a demographic that most nations can leverage on for development. However, in Nigeria, this has not really particularly been the case, with increasing unemployment and a massive population of out-of-school children and youths. Presidential candidate of the Labour Party in Nigeria's 2023 election, Peter Obi, in a recent interview with News Central, says something needs to be done about that to harness the country's youthful strength for development.
Even want Nigeria to work, our focus today should be how we can invest in small young people to unleash their innovative entrepreneurs spirit in building a new Nigeria. And they'll create jobs. And I always give this example when I use China. If you go to China today, believed to be the most thriving economy in terms of productivity. SMEs contribute over 60% of the GDP. They create over 60% of the jobs, In fact, they create 80% of the urban jobs. That is what Nigeria should do by investing in them. All these resources we are wasting should be thrown to them. They should have access to good education, access to entrepreneurial support, access to funding to start business.
The Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, has launched the device management system to register and regulate all mobile phones on communication networks nationwide. Now, this system is part of the NCC's new Type Approval Business Rule 2024 and requires all mobile network operators to connect to the DMS platform. The DMS will act as a central equipment identity register, tracking mobile devices through their international mobile equipment identity numbers and synchronizing them with a global database. The initiative aims to enhance security, control unapproved devices, and prevent mobile theft and fraud. Unregistered devices will be blacklisted, making them unusable within Nigeria. Time for a break. When News Central now returns, we'll tell you about mounting concerns about fuel price as landing costs rise. We have details after the break. Join us again. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, oil marketers have raised concerns over the delay in announcing the price of premium motor spirit produced by the Dangote Petroleum Refinery amid rising landing costs for imported fuel. Marketers noted that the landing cost of imported PMS now stands at about 1,120 naira per litre and warned that a high price from the Dangote refinery could push dealers to import fuel independently, given the government's decision to open the market to competition. In July, the Major Energy Marketers Association of Nigeria reported a landing cost of 1,117 naira per litre. While petrol pump prices ranged between 600 to 700 naira per litre in July, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited recently raised prices to between 855 and 897 naira per litre, with some independent dealers exceeding 1,000 naira per litre. The Ministry of Finance has unveiled plans for a market-driven mortgage fund aimed at expanding access to affordable home ownership in Nigeria. The initiative, announced by Finance Minister Wale Edun on Tuesday, is part of the 1 Million Homes Presidential Initiative. The Ministry of Finance incorporated Real Estate Investment Fund with offer low-cost mortgage options, particularly targeting pension account holders to broaden home ownership opportunities. Edun highlighted the fund's potential to provide cost-effective mortgages and stressed the importance of stakeholder dialogue in shaping the initiative's success. Abia State government says it hopes the electricity bill currently being debated at the State House of Assembly will aid the much-needed reform in the energy sector. The Commissioner for Information in the state, Oke Kanu, during a press briefing on the outcomes of the State Executive Council meeting, said the bill, when passed into law, empowers the state to generate and distribute power. Also, the Commissioner for Public Utilities, Ikechukwu Monday, said he is hopeful that the bill, which had already scaled second reading, will receive expeditious passage into law once the lawmakers resume sitting. He said the existing Electricity Act in the state did not take care of major areas that the new one has been designed to address. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff says the armed forces would build the capacity of locals in the northwest to effectively defend themselves against bandits acting as first responders before troops arrive. The defense chief, in company of their security chiefs, made this known in Abuja during the State of the Nation update on insecurity in the country. He says that the method has proven effective in the northeast region against terrorists and will be applied in the northwest. He also called on citizens to work with the military and shun every effort at giving support to bandits. Now joining us to speak further on this is our Abuja Bureau Chief, Amadine Uyi, who is live at the press briefing. Hello, Amadine. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so can you give us a summary of the issues raised by the Chief of Defense Staff during the press briefing?
Okay, just like you said earlier, it was the State of the Nation update on efforts aimed at curbing insecurity in the nation and also restoring peace to troubled areas. The defense chief was in company of several service chiefs, and those who could not attend in person sent representatives to represent them. Now, the defense chief gave an update on efforts aimed at ending insecurity in the different regions: the northeast, the north central, the northwest, the south-south, the southwest, and the southeast. And the defense chief also intimated Nigerians on efforts that troops on ground are playing to restore law and order and also to nip insecurity and violence in the bud.
All right, so what is the defense chief, saying about ending the escalating insecurity in the northwest? He said that they will still use the same tactics they intend to use for the northeast, on the northwest as well.
First of all, the Chief of Defense Staff expressed concerns about the rising insecurity. Remember that in the last few weeks, last few days, there have been reported cases of violence and attacks on rural communities. Just yesterday, a medical facility was attacked in Kaduna, where around the Maiduguri area, where the bandits had gone to attack a school there, but did not meet students. Then they unleashed their terror on a primary healthcare facility, kidnapping 2 nurses and dragging patients out. Also, we have the case of the Emir of Gobi from Sabon Berni in Sokoto State, who was recently murdered by these bandits. And then there was the recent case of the bandits using propaganda where they had engaged security forces, and when their APC, armored personnel carrier, got stuck in the mud, they had to withdraw. The bandits went and attacked, posted videos, and tried to paint a false narrative that they had overpowered security. So the defense chief emphasized all this, saying these incidents are causing immense worry to the federal government and security chiefs. But he informed all present that they would effect a strategy that they had effected in the northeast, now in the northwest. And what was that strategy? They would train the local population to act as first responders, so that while they are being attacked by these criminal elements and they try to send a message to the military authorities to come to their rescue, they can, within those first few minutes, try to be able to hold the bandits before the military come and finish the job. Now, one notable thing the Chief of Defense Staff said was that they were going to harmonize all operations in the northwest. Remember that before now, the three different security, the three arms of the armed forces, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, they had their own separate operations. But the Chief of Defense Staff said that everything was going to be harmonized into one, so that the commander in charge of restoring peace to that region will be able to utilize the resources of these 3 arms of the armed forces, and Nigerian troops will be able to crush the terrorists and restore law and order.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Amadine, for that update on the press briefing that happened earlier in the day. Away from that, September 10 is globally recognized as World Suicide Prevention Day. The day was introduced by the International Association of Suicide Prevention alongside the WHO, that's the World Health Organization, to raise awareness and in so doing, support advocacy for suicide prevention. By dedicating an entire day to suicide prevention, the aim is to change the narrative around mental health, counter misconceptions, and address poor understanding surrounding this highly stigmatized condition. News Central's Bettina Nweli reports.
Suicide, the deliberate act of ending one's life, often serves as a desperate escape from unbearable suffering. According to the World Health Organization, each year, nearly 800,000 individuals globally succumb to suicide, with many more attempting it. Contrary to the perception that suicide is predominant in high-income nations, it is a widespread problem affecting various regions worldwide, particularly in low-income countries like those in Africa and Asia.
Suicide is a cry for help. When someone is going through a suicidal phase, it means they are struggling to cope. It means they have tried all coping mechanisms accessible to them and it hasn't worked. So it means they require external intervention.
Every year, thousands of Nigerians battle the silent struggle with mental health. Yet, instead of receiving care, support, and empathy, many are forced into isolation by a system that treats suicide attempts as a crime. Suicide is currently illegal in Nigeria, and those who survive face the possibility of legal punishment. Criminalizing suicide doesn't prevent it, it punishes the most vulnerable among us.
The benefits we're looking at here is that we're likely to save more lives because it means that there would be more available services and resources to support people who are struggling and who may be having suicidal thoughts. It means that more people would be willing to seek help because they know that external support is there.
Globally, suicide claims over 720,000 lives annually, and for every life lost, many more attempt to end their own. With a population of over 215 million, the burden on Nigeria's mental health services is immense, yet support is short in supply. The country has just over 200 psychiatrists, far too few to meet the rising demand for mental health care systems.
If suicide is decriminalized on the criminal justice part, it means that they take something off their hands. They can free up resources to channel into something else, right? And then they now push at addressing suicide interventions to the healthcare system.
Everyone deserves access to health care, including mental health services. But when suicide is criminalized, it sends the message that mental health struggles are personal failures or a crime, rather than a public health issue that requires urgent care. In Lagos, for News Central, I am Bettina Nweli.
Joining us on the news to discuss this is a mental health coach, Dimma Amadi. Hello, Dimma, and thank you for joining us at this time.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right, Dimma, can you tell us what makes up the vulnerable groups, especially when it comes to those who are experiencing discrimination, conflict, disaster, violence, and abuse? What makes them more susceptible to suicide?
Well, when you talk about what makes up the vulnerable group for suicide, the groups that you have just mentioned, I know, yes, that financial restraint is a very, very huge influence for suicidal ideation. But I always tell people, from what I have seen and experienced, and even from statistics, that everyone is vulnerable to suicide. It can literally be anyone. So there are definitely vulnerable groups, but anybody at all can be vulnerable. And that's why we hear really happy people, who are doing well in their jobs, in their occupation, in their lives, and suddenly they take their lives. We hear CEOs and officers who are working in well-earning income institutions taking their lives. So everyone is vulnerable to suicide. It can literally be anyone. It doesn't matter whether you live in a low-income state or not. It doesn't matter whether you are doing a good job or not. It doesn't matter if you even have family around you. Anybody can be vulnerable.
All right. So what about the preventive measures? Which of them can be taken to address suicide as a serious public health challenge?
The first preventive measure for me would be decriminalization of suicide, destigmatization of suicide, which one of the things that can be done to destigmatize suicide is the criminalization of suicide. By criminalizing suicide attempts, we are only telling people that you have no right to speak up and that what is wrong with you is not accepted. So it's a crime. Actually, when we criminalize suicide attempts, we are not saying that you attempting to take your life is a crime. The message that it is passing to the person who is attempting to take their life is that whatever it is you're going through is the actual crime and it is no one's business. So destigmatizing suicide by decriminalizing it will definitely be a huge step in improving, vulnerability and speaking up in Nigeria. And then secondly is education around suicide. This year's theme for suicide is change the narrative of suicide. And the only way we can change this narrative is by talking about it. And the call to action for this year's theme is start the conversation. So one preventive measure is to start this conversation. And we can only start the conversation if we have the freedom to even talk about it, the freedom to, open up about what you're going through as a person. So one way is decriminalization of suicide, to destigmatize it through education and through, having conversations around this. Schools should be open, workplaces should be open, private workplaces and government workplaces should be open to talking about things like this vulnerability and things that can make people to conceal suicide ideation in their heart.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dima, for joining us and also speaking to us on this very important issue.
You're welcome.
Coming up, Djibouti offers port sharing deal to ease Ethiopia-Somalia tensions. We'll bring you details after the break. Djibouti has offered a port-sharing arrangement with Ethiopia in a bid to ease tensions between Horn of Africa rivals Ethiopia and Somalia. Relations between Mogadishu and Addis Ababa have deteriorated sharply since Ethiopia signed a controversial maritime agreement in January with Somaliland, a self-declared independent region of Somalia. The deal, which grants landlocked Ethiopia access to the sea, has been condemned by Somalia as a violation of its sovereignty. Djibouti's Foreign Minister, Mohammed Ali Yusuf, announced that his government is proposing to jointly operate the port of Tajura with Ethiopia, but clarified that Djibouti has no plans to completely hand over the facility. The $60 million port, which opened in 2017, provides strategic access to the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea, a critical global maritime trade route. In Central Africa, Human Rights Watch has raised concerns over two new laws in Angola, warning that they will significantly restrict media operations and suppress protests critical of the government. According to the global rights watchdog, the bills signed into law by President João Lourenço on August 29 do not meet international human rights standards and threaten the freedoms of the media, expression, and association. One of the laws, the bill on the crimes of vandalism of public goods and services, imposes prison sentences of up to 25 years for protests that lead to vandalism or service disruptions, and up to 15 years for sharing or publishing information such as photographs or drawings related to security measures in public places. Opposition activists and journalists in Angola have also condemned the laws, citing their impact on civil liberties. And in the world of sports, earlier today, the Super Eagles of Nigeria were held to a goalless draw by the Amavubi of Rwanda during the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier played at the Amahoro Stadium in Kigali. Coach Augustine Eguavon made only one change to the team that defeated Benin 3-0 on Saturday, with Alex Iwobi dropped to the bench and Lazio midfielder Fisayo Dele Bashiru taking his spot. Now, Victor Osimhen, who was also listed among the substitutes, while Victor Boniface again led the attack. Nigeria played on the front foot for the best part of the game, created several goal-scoring chances, and were unlucky to have a seemingly good goal by Ademola Lookman controversially chalked off for offside. Now, the Super Eagles still maintain their position on top of Group D with 4 points, with Benin and Libya playing later tonight. Nigeria's men's under-18 basketball team have advanced to the quarterfinals of the FIBA Under-18 Afro-Basket Championship after defeating Uganda 72-61 in their final group game. After an opening loss to Egypt on September 4, where they fell 70-57, the Junior Tigers bounced back with a crucial win over Angola under the guidance of coach Fubara Onyanabo. The team secured a second consecutive victory, ensuring their spot in their quarterfinals. The final standing in Group B will be determined based on the outcome of the last group game between Egypt and Angola. Nigeria's Junior Tigers are set to finish either first or second in their group. Still talking sports, Aston Martin have confirmed the signing of legendary Formula One designer Adrian Newey as managing technical partner and a shareholder of the team. The 65-year-old's exit from his role as chief technical officer at Red Bull was confirmed in May after an apparent breakdown in his relationship with team principal Christian Horner. Newey will start work at Aston Martin on the 1st of March 2025, having agreed to remain with Red Bull until then to see out his work on the company's first hypercar, the RB17. Newey's signing is the latest show of ambition from Aston Martin owner Lawrence Stroll, with the team having recently appointed former Ferrari designer Enrico Cardile as Chief Technical Officer and former Mercedes engine guru Andy Cowell as Group Chief Executive. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, here's another look at some of our top stories. We told you that President Tinubu calls for swift evacuation humanitarian aid. We also told you that DSS returns NLC leaders seized passport. You also heard that Angolan government faces backlash over laws curbing free speech and assembly. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen. Usman.